With Suze, we are back for some tea time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Except we're not on a fireside chat today. We've got a waterside chat. And instead of fire, we've got boats. But our special guest, Jamie Angus, is back.
Hello. Hi there.
For those of you who don't know, this is my husband. And for the longest time, I was trying to get him to join us on News with Suze, and now he's enjoying himself so much that now he's going to be in the hot seat. So today we are going to be discussing the turmoil in the British royal family that has kind of shocked the world this week with regards to Jeffrey Epstein and Prince Andrew. Right. Prince Andrew. He has officially, I guess he's officially no longer part of the royal family because all of the Epstein associations has caught up to him. Tell us what happened this week, what it means, and kind of, I know this is like almost 15 years of what happened that you'll need to summarize, but for those of us who haven't been following this from every corner, kind of sum it up for us.
Yeah, there's a lot to get through. So, Prince Andrew has been embroiled in almost 15-year scandal about his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, and specifically one of Epstein's victims, Virginia Giuffre, who was a young woman, or she was a child actually, she was a minor. She was groomed to travel as part of Epstein's team as a masseuse, but it's acknowledged and alleged in her book that she was multiply abused by powerful men and by Epstein himself.
And her book is coming out this week.
This week, tomorrow, in fact.
Posthumously. So her book is coming out tomorrow, and King Charles is going to the Vatican tomorrow.
Yeah.
To pray with the Pope.
So there's a lot happening this week. We'll come back to the Vatican trip. So the issues for Prince Andrew have really been running since 2011, when it was first exposed that he had continued to associate with Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein's conviction in 2008 for child sex offence in Florida. And events have just snowballed, and from that time, every effort by Prince Andrew to shut this story down has failed. He has gradually either had his titles first as a UK trade envoy and then his royal prerogatives removed from him more or less forcibly, initially by the Queen Elizabeth, after her death, of course, now by the King Charles. And things really came to a head, I think, the latest iteration of this story around 10 days ago, when the Sunday Times published emails that they had obtained, which I think were critical for this reason. They proved for the first time that Prince Andrew had lied, categorically proved that he had lied, as it happened in an interview with the BBC, so with Emily Maitlis and colleagues from BBC Newsnight. In 2019, Prince Andrew had stated pretty categorically in that interview that he had no contact with Jeffrey Epstein after 2011, when they were pictured together walking in Central Park. You may remember seeing this picture in the news coverage. He said, "I had no further contact with him after that point." The emails that the Sunday Times obtained, which weren't denied by Palace and Prince Andrew, established that that was a lie. He had emailed him fairly short time
And what did he
afterwards.
say in the email?
And he said in that email, it was kind of creepy email where he said, we're in this together. I hope we play together again soon.
Oh, gosh.
It was like the context of the email, the content of the email, as well as the fact of being sent, was just incredibly damaging. And it raised the question that if he lied about that, he quite possibly lied about anything and everything else, including, of course, the fact that he continues to deny that he met Virginia Giuffre. He said he doesn't remember meeting her, and he denies all the allegations against him.
Except there's a photo.
The photo is, in a way, the most damaging thing about the story. Virginia Giuffre took a picture when she was with Prince Andrew. That picture was published by the Mail on Sunday in the UK originally, and that has really been impossible for Andrew to explain away or throw off this photo. So when the latest email revelations landed around 8 or 9 days ago, I think it'd be fair to say there was kind of panic in Buckingham Palace, certainly in the King's court, because it would be impossible for the monarchy to continue in a situation where a senior royal, a brother of the King, has essentially been shown to have lied, as it happens to the UK public broadcaster, in an issue of such intense kind of public scrutiny. And so the message went out last Thursday that he would no longer be known by his Duke title, the Duke of York. His former wife, Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, they would voluntarily stop the use of their title.
Oh, so the ex-wife also loses her title?
She's no longer
even though she didn't have anything to...
She also had dealings with Epstein, and the previous emails that had come out that showed that she had written to Epstein after his original conviction of child sex charges in really damaging terms. So both of them are now no longer going to use their royal titles. He is technically still Prince Andrew, but he is effectively completely withdrawn from public life, completely withdrawn from all royal duties. And I think the palace had hoped, as of last Thursday, when they made this announcement, that although the announcement would be in itself would be damaging, that would kind of draw a line under what has been a really problematic period. They feared that there was worse to come out about Prince Andrew, and indeed so it has transpired.
So what does it mean if you no longer have your royal title? I mean, does Prince Harry technically no longer have his royal title? Obviously, he gave it up voluntarily for his American wife.
I think that's right, that just the fact of him being able to still call himself the Duke of York was sitting very badly with public opinion in the UK. And actually, even subsequent to that, there now seems to be a head of steam building around whether there's any further ability to remove even his title of prince. It's not really clear whether that can be done by Parliament or by the King, or whether it will be done. But this goes to show why this is such a critical issue.
What does it mean if you're a prince? Sorry to interrupt.
Well, he is a prince by fact because he is the brother of the King.
No, but I'm saying if it was strict, what would happen?
Well, in practice, nothing would happen. So we're never going to hear from or see Prince Andrew again in any public capacity, and probably in any private capacity. That much is clear. And I think what's now being kind of discussed are kind of degrees of punishment, and whether it's important for Parliament to take a stand and demand that there is a further punishment on him. And that sort of strays into the realms of politics. But, what came out over the weekend were yet more emails which showed, and this is particularly damaging, that Prince Andrew had, at the point at which the picture was published of him and Virginia Giuffre, that Prince Andrew had tried to prevail on his police bodyguards, his security staff, who are UK police officers, to dig up dirt on Virginia Giuffre. He had her social security number, US social security number. The implication is he must probably have got that from Jeffrey Epstein himself. And this is another very damaging development, because it opens the possibility that parts of the UK state, so the Metropolitan Police and the kind of public support that Prince Andrew then had as a working member of the Royal Family, was somehow implicated in an attempt to cover up this episode. So that's why, for all that happened last week, I don't think we've heard the end of it. I think there might even go on to be, if not a kind of full public inquiry, there will have to be some kind of inquiry as to whether any kind of state resources were ever used in an attempt to cover up these, these incidents and activities. And you'll remember that Prince Andrew himself settled a civil suit with Virginia Giuffre in 2022 for around £12 million. And again, some political figures are asking questions about whether the funding for that settlement in any sense came from public funds. The palace understood to say that it came from the Queen's own private wealth. It was understood that she herself had paid for the settlement of the suit, in part in order to make the story go away. Prince Andrew settled the civil suit without an admission of liability. He said, "I'm not liable. I deny all the allegations against me, but I'm paying to settle this."
And the Queen died a couple of months later.
Yeah, a few months after that, towards the end of September 2022.
So Prince Andrew was her favorite son, it's been alleged, right?
That's right. And it should be remembered that in his younger years, Andrew was incredibly popular with the UK public, and he was a man about town. He had a kind of colourful life as a single man.
His nickname was Brandy Andy.
Thank you, you beat me to it. And he was popular. He was popular at a time when the royal family needed kind of popular young members of the family for the public to to kind of feel they could relate to. Subsequent to leaving the armed forces, he had a long career in the armed forces. When after that, he seemed to be a man without a role, and he had a role as this British trade envoy. He had already been in contact with Epstein, as it turned out, for quite some period by that time, and he was drawn into Epstein's world. And it appears, obviously the account given by Virginia Dufresne in a posthumous book is that Andrew effectively raped her 3 times. We know that the time that she alleges that the incident in London was when she was a minor. She was 17 years old. It has been the most incredibly damaging episode for the royal family. Andrew, of course, denies all these allegations, but they remain in the public record. So, as I say, I don't think we'll hear from him again. It remains to be seen what the damage is to the UK monarchy. But I think, turning to your point about the plans of this week, the King's going to the Vatican this week. He's going to pray with the Pope. Charles is a relatively new king. He's suffered a period of illness. He's had cancer. There have been other issues in the royal family to do with Prince Harry, which we could do a whole other podcast on. And it's a really interesting question about how accepting of the existence of the royal family are the British public. It's part Prince Harry's criticism, in his book Spare. Part of Harry's criticism is that the royal family is so paranoid about public opinion in the UK that they'll kind of do anything to curry favour with the public, including, he believes, throwing him and his wife Meghan Markle under a bus. So I think all of these events can be seen a bit in that context, and I guess that's probably why people have questions who aren't from the UK, to understand the kind of precise nature of the relationship between the UK public and its monarchy.
So you're saying that this is incredibly damaging for the monarchy. I mean, damaging to what end? Like, what's at stake?
Well, I think ultimately the existence of the monarchy is at stake. I mean, it's not an overstatement to say that this story has been seen in the palace to pose an almost existential threat to the royal family, because the details of it are so utterly damning, and it touches so close to senior members of the royal family. Obviously, he is the brother of the king and was the son of the Queen when she was still alive.
I mean, the Queen effectively covered for him. I mean, is it fair to say that?
It's not really clear exactly what the Queen's view was. She had a certain sympathy for Andrew. It looked like she funded the settlement of the civil suit. But it's also true that she oversaw the withdrawal of some of his public duty. He withdrew from public duties while she was still alive, actually. And she did move to try and limit the damage from this episode. I think to your question about what's at stake, the British monarchy has no fundamental right to exist. It exists by the consent of the people, even though it's deeply plumbed into every level of the state. And the royal family are very aware of that. They're aware that monarchies don't survive if they lose the support of their people.
I mean, I think it's ironic to be having this conversation the day after there was a No Kings
Right,
protest
I know, right?
in the U.S. and various countries across the U.S. because the American people are concerned that Donald Trump is acting like a king, and our country was founded in rebellion to your country because we didn't want a monarchy.
That's right.
But as a result, we are still kind of really intrigued by the British royals and the British monarchy.
Yeah, I would say that no one's more intrigued by the British royal family than Americans.
Yeah.
And you're right, the No Kings is so ironic, particularly because, I should explain for international viewers joining us, that the king technically and in reality doesn't have a lot of power in the UK. So that's my opinion. Other people disagree.
So okay, the UK is a democracy, but there's a king.
Yeah, it's a democracy. It's a parliamentary monarchy and a democracy. And the monarch is the head of state and has ceremonial duties and important duties in matters of state. So the king signs the laws. The king reads state papers.
But he can't make the
is
laws.
briefed on intelligence matters. There's a whole other story about the Chinese. We'll get into the Chinese spy thing in a minute, but that's Prince Andrew as well. So the king has to describe it just as a ceremonial role is not right. The king appoints prime ministers. In fact, he doesn't choose who the prime minister is going to be, but in a sense, it's down to the king to appoint parliament. The king opens parliament every year, the state opening parliament. But the convention of the unwritten British constitution is that the king holds almost limitless powers, which he never exercises, because if he were ever to exercise them kind of unilaterally of his own volition, it would mean the end of monarchy. So it's a kind of rather British arrangement where nothing's written down. Everyone understands that the monarch is the head of state, has all these powers, never exercises them without being guided and advised and with the authority of a democratically elected parliament. And broadly, kind of bar the odd crisis like the abdication in 1938, we've kind of muddled along with this system for quite some time, and I'm not sure it's any worse than anyone else's system. In fact, looking at the state of the US sometimes, I think it's probably better than your system. So that's the way it works.
Do the British people have to pay for the monarchy?
Well, again, it depends who you ask. So,
do your taxes pay for the king and queen?
Some public funding goes to support a very small number of members of the royal family.
So, do we think it's coincidence that this all happened on the eve of King Charles's first visit to see the Pope in the Vatican? It's the first time a British monarch is going to the Vatican in 500 years.
Well, it's probably coincidental that it happened, but it's certainly not coincidental that the palace has taken this step in advance of the Vatican trip, because I think this is an incredibly important moment for King Charles, who, as we know, sees himself as a kind of progressive thinker in matters of faith. The fact he's doing the trip at all, let alone praying with the Pope, is a very strong statement of what Charles, as a king, sees himself as part of his story.
I mean, it's a big deal, right? I mean, I know we're here talking about Epstein, but actually, can we for a second talk about how big of a deal that is?
Yeah, because as we know, to say that there's a long and unhappy history of splits between the Anglican Church, of which King Charles is, of course, the head of the Anglican Church in the UK, and the Catholic Church dating back to Henry VIII. We won't cover that on this podcast. Google it if you're not familiar. But there's a long and, in past history, bloody history between Catholic and the Church of England. And so that kind of symbolic moment is just immensely important. And it's very clear that King Charles did not want that entire trip to be overshadowed by questions about Prince Andrew. That may still be the case, unfortunately, because, as we can talk about in a second, further issues have come up even in the last couple of days. But that is why one of the reasons that the palace really moved quickly to shut this